Okay. The fifth and final method for solving quadratic equations is by using the quadratic formula. So we're going to answer the question, how do I solve by using the quadratic formula? All right. So we're going to answer that question today. It's a very simple process. The quadratic formula is this formula here in the box. X equals the opposite of B. Now, we say the opposite of because B could be negative. So when I have a negative in front of the B, it's like saying the opposite of whatever B is. So the opposite of B plus minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. There's your formula. Now, in order to use this formula, which is very simple, we have to first write this equation in standard form. That is, ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. Then we identify the a, the b, and the c, and substitute them into the formula and simplify. It's that simple. So, when we look at number 1, we see that this problem is already in standard form. So all we have to do is identify the parts, A, B, and C. Now, A, B, and C will never include an X value. Just the numbers that are in front. So, hey, we're going to have an A, which is 1. Even though there's not a 1 there, it's a 1. So A is 1. B is 2. So A is 1? Yes, it is. I'm glad you said negative 63 because a lot of times the mistake is that students forget the sign that's in front of the number. So it's negative 63. So once I know what A, B, and C are, now I just plug them into the formula. So X equals negative parentheses 2, because B is 2. Notice I always put a number in parentheses when I'm plugging in for the variable. All right. Plus minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 63. Very good. Yeah, this is the formula. Over 2 times 1. Now, often students forget to include the denominator of this. They just leave it off by accident. Okay? Another thing students do is they try to put all of this in the calculator at once. That's a bad idea. Do you know why that's a bad idea? It's going to pop up an error, probably, because this is not always a perfect square. It might be negative 48, which the calculator can't do. It won't do it. Okay? So you do not want to put this in the calculator all at once. I'll tell you another reason you don't put it in the calculator. Because this is two answers. This is positive and negative square root. Okay? So you just have to simplify step by step, and then at the end is when we do our final answers. Now, yes, thank you. You've already done this, haven't you? All right. Well, all of you have already done this. You've done this in 9th grade.
I did.
Okay? All right. You do what's under the radical first. So you're going to do 2 squared in the calculator. You're going to do 2 squared, so 2 parentheses 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 63. And you get 256. Alright, so I'm going to bring down this minus 2 plus minus the root of 256 over 2. Now, this is going to work out nicely because 256 is a perfect square. So what's the square root of 256? 16. Very good. So I'm going to simplify that one more time. So equals negative 2 plus minus 16 over 2. Now, we can continue simplifying because what number are all of these numbers divisible? What number is all of these numbers divisible by? 2. So what this really is a negative 1 plus minus 8 over 1. But I don't need to put it over 1, do I? No. So the last step is to simplify this. So I should have negative 1 plus 8, which is 7, and negative 1 minus 8. So there are your two answers. And that's it. So the trick is plugging it in properly and then simplifying it properly. Okay? That's basically all there is to it. All right, let's look at number 2. The wonderful thing about the quadratic formula is that it works no matter what the quadratic equation looks like. If it's not factorable, it works. If it's not good, if it won't be effective or efficient to use completing the square, the formula works just fine. If it is factorable, the formula works. If you can do it by square roots, the formula still works. The formula works every single time. That's why it's very efficient. But it's not always the fastest. Sometimes factoring is the fastest. Sometimes solving by square roots is the fastest. All right, so let's do number 2. Okay, so what is A? No? 6. All right, hold on, let me pause this for just a second. All right, what is B?
11, negative 11.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said negative 11. All right, what is C?
Negative 10.
Negative 10. Okay, so now all we do is plug these values into the function, into the formula. So x equals negative, parentheses, negative 11, plus minus the square root of negative 11 squared, minus 4 times 6 times negative 10. All over 2 times 6. Okay, then I just simplify underneath the radical. Okay, bring down the 11. Okay, very good. Okay, so what's under 361? Very good. When you put this in the calculator, you get 361. Okay? Alright, all of that is over 12. Good. The square root of 361 is 19. These numbers are not always going to be perfect squares. Let's go ahead and tell you. But this time it is. 11 plus minus 19 over 12. Now, 11, 19, and 12 do not share a common factor. Yeah. So, what you're going to do is just add 11 and 19, and that's 20. So, 30. So, you'd have 30 over 12, comma, 11 minus 19, negative 8 over 12. And can these simplify?
Yes.
So, what does that become?
15 over 6, and negative 4 over 3.
Can you go further?
Yes. No, you can divide it. You can multiply by. You can get 5.
What about 6?
That's all I'm saying. 5
Alright,
over 2.
5 over 2. Good, good. And you can do 4 here.
2 over 4. Yeah, 2 over 3.
Negative 2 over 3. So there's your solutions. Okay? Now, if I had tried to do this by factoring, it might factor. I'll go ahead and tell you, it does factor. But if I had to do this by factoring, I'm going to have to do it by trial and error. It might take me a few tries to do it. Okay? So it might take longer. But if I use this formula, it's just as fast as the simplest problem there is. Okay? So the thing about the quadratic formula is that it's always the same speed. Miss Willis, I allowed him to charge his phone. I know. Alright. Okay. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you where this formula comes from. Okay? I'm not going to video this. I'm just going to show it to you, and then we're going to do some more practice. I take that back. I am going to video this because I want you to see where it comes from. All right, let me get a fresh screen. Okay, everybody in the class should know what standard form is, right? No, you do not have to write this. So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, I'm going to say a what if. What if somebody said solve that equation Well, how would I solve that? There's no numbers, okay? But the great thing about math and higher level math is that you can prove things are true without numbers, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this. Now, I can't factor that. So if I can't factor it, and I can't solve it by square roots, and I don't know the quadratic formula yet, and I don't know how to graph this because I don't have numbers and all, how am I going to solve it? There's one method left. We learned it yesterday.
Is it,
Well, we've been practicing all day long.
The quadratic formula.
No, we're talking about that now.
the 2A?
Comes leading the square. That's the process that will work along with the quadratic formula every single time for solving any quadratic equation. This is a quadratic equation, is it not? Yes. So let's use completing the square. Now, I do not expect you to know how to do this. What I do expect you to do is follow along mentally, focus, and I do expect you to kind of understand what I'm doing, even though you wouldn't know what to do, and I don't expect you to know what to do. Yes, you would. So glad you said that. First thing is get that c out of the way. So ax squared plus bx equals negative c. All right. Now we do not want what in this problem? We don't want the a. Very good. So we're going to do what with the a?
Divide by A.
Excellent. Divide every term by a. Now, since there are no numbers here, nothing goes away, right? Okay? It stays. Now the a over a goes away. X squared plus b over a x plus blank equals negative c over a plus blank. Okay, so b over a is the b, well, it's, okay, found b over a. Now,
Little b over A.
it's a little b over a. Alright. What are we going to do now? We got to complete the square.
Divided by 2.
Divide it by 2. Now, if I divide b over a by 2,
That'd be 2.
it becomes, well, no, you're close. It becomes b over 2a. It becomes b over 2a. So, I've got b over 2a, and I need to square that. What does it give me? It gives me b times b is
B squared.
b squared over
4a squared.
yes. So that's what I add to both sides. Good job. Okay? Now, we've completed the square. Now we factor this, and you say, I don't know how to factor. Yes, you do. All we do is you take half of this, and we already said it's this. b over 2a. Alright, equals this stuff. Negative c over a. I'm going to go ahead and simplify that before I write it. Whoops. Okay, I messed up. Oops. Alright. Alright. When we simplify this, we've got to get a common denominator. I'll go ahead and tell you that the common denominator of a and 4a squared would be 4a squared. You ask yourself, what is this part missing that this part has? An a and a 4, right? What does this denominator not have that this denominator does have? An a squared and a 4. So to make a squared, I need another a, right? And to make the 4, I got to multiply by 4. So ultimately, I'm multiplying top and bottom by 4a. So that gives me a negative 4ac over 4a squared. And I'm just going to put 4a squared one time, plus b squared. Okay? Alright, now, we've gotten to a point where kind of everybody follows along and kind of understands where we are. Square root of both sides. Okay? I'm taking the square root of both sides. So, I'm going to take the square root of the left side and just get whatever's under here. X plus b over 2a. That equals plus minus. Now, I can't take the square root and simplify all of this, but I can do some of it. I cannot do the numerator, but I am going to rearrange it. It's going to be square root of b squared minus 4ac. Okay? All of that is going to be over the square root of 2a squared. So what is that? What? It is. So what is it? What do you get? 2,
Square, 2A.
2A. Very good. Is this starting to look familiar?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So, over 2A. Well, now I got to subtract the B over 2A.
Wouldn't it just
All right.
be B? Because you can't keep it squared.
Okay, so I subtract the B over 2A, but notice that these have the same denominator, right?
I'm talking about that one B that we just squared.
This one right here?
Yeah, wouldn't it?
No, because this is all one thing. It's not just B squared. Good question, though. Alright, so I've got a 2A here and a 2A here, so that's a common denominator, right? No, you don't put them together. It'd be like saying 1/4 plus 2/4 is 3/4. You see what I'm saying? Okay, the negative B goes on top, plus minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC over 2A. That's where the formula comes from. The formula comes from solving the standard form quadratic equation by completing the square. Just did it. Now again, I would never expect one of my students to be able to do this on the first, alright, here you go, solve it. No, I mean, maybe you could, I hope you could. But I do expect you to be able to follow along with the steps, and y'all did. Y'all were telling me what to do before I even got to it. Okay?
I was.
And notice that we end up with the quadratic formula. So, the quadratic formula is an extremely useful tool to solve any quadratic equation, no matter what it looks like. As long as you can get that equation in standard form correctly, then you should be good. Alright, so let's go back to our worksheet. I'm going to pause the video and let you practice one, and then we'll talk about homework. Alright, so the common mistake that I'm seeing here is that we are not moving, some of us are not moving the 1 to the left side. So be careful about that. You've got to get all the parts to the left side so it's in standard form. So subtract 1 from each side. That's going to give you negative x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals 0. Alright, now we can plug into the formula. So x equals negative parentheses 2. What is it? 2 squared minus 4 times over 2 times negative 1. Alright, so we simplify what we got here, so we get negative 2 plus minus the root of, look what happens, 4 minus 4 is 0 over negative 2. So this becomes negative 2 over negative 1, which is just negative 2 over negative 2, which is positive 1. Alright, so there's one answer here. Notice on these other problems, listen, there were 2 answers. Anytime there's one answer, there are actually 2 answers, because I could do the negative 2 plus 0, which is negative 2, or I could do negative 2 minus 0, which is still negative 2. This is called a double root. We don't have to write it twice. We'll just write it once. This would be when the vertex of this function is on the x-axis. So the graph of this might look something like this, because it's facing down. Maybe it looks like this. Okay? Something like that. With 1 right there. Alright, now, this is always going to happen. You're always going to get one real answer when what's underneath the square root is equal to 0. You're always going to get 2 real answers whenever what's underneath the square root is greater than 1. And you're always going to get 2 imaginary or complex answers when what's under these, I said that wrong, you're going to get 2 real answers when the value underneath the radical is greater than 0. And when it's less than 0, you're going to get 2 imaginary. Alright, so we're going to stop the video there. I will tell you before I stop the video that your homework comes from homework worksheet 7 And you're going to do 1 through 11 odd. 1 through 11 odd.